This is a Fox News alert. News from the President of the United States that there has been an attack inside Iran. Just moments ago, President Donald Trump putting out on Truth Social, we have completed our very successful attack on 3 nuclear sites in Iran, including Fordo, Natanz, and Esfahan. All planes are now outside of Iran airspace. Again, this from President Donald Trump. A full payload of bombs was dropped on the primary site, Fordo. All planes are safely on their way home. Congratulations to our great American warriors. There is not another military in the world that could have done this. Now is the time for peace. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Again, that's just seconds ago from President Donald Trump on Truth Social, suggesting that those B-2 bombers that perhaps were on the way may have been behind this. We'll get more details on these 3 sites that the president said has been attacked inside Iran. This comes after days of negotiations to try to get Iran to the negotiating table. The president of the United States saying it would have to be unconditional surrender, saying enrichment would have to stop. We heard from negotiations in Europe that that was not being accepted by the Iranians, that they would not stop enriching uranium. There was a thought that this could go as long as 2 weeks, as the president said he would decide within 2 weeks. However, 2 days is within 2 weeks. And now word from President Donald Trump that these attacks have happened. Again, interesting that 3 sites have been struck by U.S. bombers, and this, again, we'll get more information about the exact targets and what bombs were used. We expect that the GBU-57, the bunker buster, the massive penetrator bomb, may have been one of those used. Fordo is a nuclear facility inside Iran that is roughly a half-mile deep underneath a rock mountain-like facility that has been said to be the site of a lot of the enrichment capability. Esfahan, believed to be a storage facility for enriched uranium, and Natanz, another part of the nuclear facilities. They have several throughout Iran. It has been long described as a very difficult and tedious effort to go after these nuclear sites, but the U.S. for the first time launching an attack inside Iran. Again, the President of the United States saying all of the planes are out of Iranian airspace. The bombings do continue by the Israelis inside Iran as this back and forth volley between Israel and Iran has continued for some 2 weeks. We expect to hear more about this operation, not only from the Pentagon, but perhaps from the White House, although the White House this evening, has called a lid, as far as meaning no one will talk after that. That may be changing now. Obviously, we have this Truth Social post from President Donald Trump.
We are going to be cutting off Senator Sanders. I'm Austin Westfall. We're getting breaking news. President Trump posting on Truth Social moments ago that the U.S. has completed an attack on 3 nuclear sites in Iran. It reads as such: "We have completed our very successful attack on 3 nuclear sites in Iran, including Fordo, Natanz, and Esfahan. All planes are now outside of Iran airspace. A full payload of bombs was dropped on the primary site, Fordo. All planes are safely on their way home. Congratulations to our great American warriors. There is not another military in the world that could have done this," Trump says. "Now is the time for peace. Thank you for your attention to this matter," the president says. We're just getting this in. He just sent this out moments ago, just before 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Trump saying the attacks are successful, the strikes are a decision for the U.S. as Iran has pledged to retaliate if it joined the Israeli assault. And for Trump personally, having won the White House on the promise of keeping America out of conflicts, we're now seeing that we are seeing a number of strikes from the U.S. in Iranian territory, including Fordo, Natanz, and the sites in Esfahan as well. This is, of course, going to lead for analysts and experts to prospect and to discuss the possibility of some sort of wider conflict. The Iran-backed Houthis in Yemen said that they would resume attacks on U.S. vessels in the Red Sea if the Trump administration joined Israel's military campaign. And of course, Iran themselves have said that the U.S. would pay if they were to get involved in a bigger fashion. So that is what we're hearing. The news of the hour, President Trump saying, quote, "We have completed our very successful attack on the 3 nuclear sites in Iran, including Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan. All planes," he says, "are now outside of Iranian airspace. A full payload of bombs was dropped on the primary site, Fordow," President Trump says. He says the planes are safely on their way home. This is something that we're going to be following for the rest of the evening. We wanted to make sure we got this breaking news into you as soon as it came out. Still a lot to learn about what exactly happened in Iran, and perhaps we will learn more in the coming minutes and hours. We're checking for any sort of statements from top officials in the White House, Secretary of State Rubio. I'll be looking out for any comments from the Israeli government or Benjamin Netanyahu. In the meantime, let's do some fact-finding behind the scenes. A live look at Tel Aviv and at Jerusalem. It's now about 3 in the morning, Israel Standard Time. We have not seen any activity in the skies above Tel Aviv or Jerusalem, at least in the few hours that I've been on the desk here. Let's take a quick break. We're going to do some fact-finding behind the scenes. We'll be back with more reporting from...
Do we have Jennifer Griffin at the Pentagon? Can we get her up and we can talk through what we're hearing from military sources? Jennifer Griffin is live at the Pentagon. Let's bring Jennifer in. Jennifer, we're just getting word, obviously, with the president's announcement, what this looks like.
Well, Brett, we knew that there was something afoot this morning when we woke and heard that there were 6 B-2 bombers that had been seen leaving Whiteman Air Force Base last night at midnight. And so those planes, we were told, were heading towards Guam. Now, Guam would have been an 18-hour flight into Iran, so it is likely that it was a different set of B-2 bombers that were used to bomb the sites, the 3 sites that the president mentioned tonight on Truth Social. That is the Fordow complex, which we've been watching all week. That is the massive main, sort of what's known as the heart or the crown jewel of Iran's nuclear program. It's underneath that mountain just outside of Qom, which is 2 hours south of Tehran. That complex, we understand, has been bombed by those U.S. B-2 bombers tonight. Also, Isfahan, as well as Natanz. Natanz had another underground facility. Remember, before Fordow was built in 2006, Natanz had been the main enrichment site. It was also built underground. Israeli jets had been targeting it in the last week, but they had not been able to penetrate underground. So those U.S. B-2 bombers, which flew out of Whiteman Air Force Base in Missouri, they would have taken out that underground facility. Natanz is interesting. You'll remember, Brett, it was the site of the Stuxnet virus, the cyber attack on those centrifuges years ago. But again, it was back up and running. And what is surprising, I think, tonight is that the president announced that it was not 1 site, but 3 underground sites and sites inside Iran's nuclear program that were struck by the U.S. Air Force tonight.
Yeah, and it is something. We'll go back to that Truth Social and eventually control room, if we can put it up there just so that everybody can see it on the screen. The fact that this, first of all, this announcement comes from Truth Social. This is a president who has put out a lot of announcements, big announcements through Truth Social, and this is the biggest of them, probably his biggest decision. The very successful attack on 3 nuclear sites, as you said, said, Fordo, Natanz, and Esfahan, getting very specific there. And the payload, he says a full payload of bombs dropped on the primary site, Fordo. That suggests, Jennifer, as we had been saying for many days, that they may have made several passes at Fordo, considering that the experts were saying that just one probably wouldn't have gotten to the heart of that facility.
Well, remember, Brett, we've been reporting in recent days that Fordo is interesting because it has two entrance points. And we were told by experts who have followed the planning for this kind of strike for a long time that it would take at least two bombs from the B-2s, those MOPs, the massive ordnance penetrators. Those are 30,000-pound bombs, and each B-2 can carry two of them. Usually the way it works is that one of the MOP 30,000-pound bunker buster is dropped. It goes into a hole that's about a radius of about 25 feet, I'm told, and then the second bomb is dropped in the same hole. And so at first that 30,000-pound bunker buster will go down about 200 feet, explode, and then make way for the second bomb, which falls into that exact 25-foot radius hole. And of course, people are calling right now, so just a moment. And so what's interesting about it, Brett, is that you would have had to have at least two B-2s, but I believe that it was likely a package of 6 B-2s that would be flying. They each had two MOP massive ordnance penetrators on board at the time, and they would have hit both those entrances at Fordo. The president saying that Fordo, that the complete package was struck. That is significant because that means, as you said, that it would probably be multiple passes and multiple bombs dropped there.
Yeah, so as we get ready, remember, they are, 7 hours ahead, and this would have been the window to pull this off. The president, again, saying that it was very successful in 3 different sites. We should point out that the Israelis have worked, really, as we've been reporting over the last week plus, very hard to take out the air defenses of Iran. Already, in a first wave of runs back in October, the Israeli military and Air Force took out a lot of those surface-to-air missiles. Now, with this latest bombing run over the past few days, Jennifer, they have essentially eliminated it. And to talk to Israeli officials, they said they have control of the skies, really a full path to Tehran, and they've been taking out sites and targets at their will, they suggested. And this led the way for this bombing run tonight.
Well, the Israeli Air Force has just been unbelievable in terms of their success since June 12th. They have been carrying out nonstop runs and strikes against Iranian targets, including the first night, 14 Iranian nuclear scientists who were taken off the battlefield, as well as about 50 top generals in the Iranian military, including the head of their Air Force, their ballistic missiles, their drone capabilities, their IRGC, the Revolutionary Guard Corps. So they have really had incredible success in terms of all of the spots and all of the above-ground spots that an F-16 or an F-35 could take out. They said a few days ago that they had air superiority. That then opens the way for the, and what that means is that they've taken out most of the air defense systems on the ground so that then their planes could really fly with impunity. And that also opened the way for those very, very, the stealth bombers, the B-2 bombers, which also are escorted, we're told, by F-22s and F-16s, and also the EA-18 Growlers. They play a very significant role. That's an electronic warfare jammer that flies with the B-2. And remember that second aircraft carrier, the USS Nimitz, had just gotten into the region earlier today. You had the USS Vinson. Those EA-18 Growlers are on board those aircraft carriers. They are absolutely essential for the B-2 to fly over Iran, even though the Israelis had air superiority over the country.
Jennifer, stand by if you would. Do I have Greg Palcott in Tel Aviv control room? Is he up and running? Okay. All right. We're going to get him up and running. Interestingly enough, Jen, we have seen a lot of Israeli missiles and drones coming in really night after night into Israel. This night has not seen that much of that. There have been a few warnings, but not the same volley that we've heard in recent days. In addition to taking out the surface-to-air missiles and clearing the way for the ability to take out targets inside Iran, they've also really managed to take out a lot of missile sites and places that have been threats for missiles fired from Iran. There is a sense even that they were taking out the trucks that moved the missiles, as precise as the Israeli military targeting has been. You've been reporting on that over the last few days.
It's really extraordinary because when this started, the Israelis estimated that the Iranians had about 100 mobile ballistic missile launchers. They have taken out, they think, about 55% of any of the missile launchers that the Iranians have access to now. The Iranians have blown through quite a bit of their missile stockpile. They had about 3,000 ballistic missiles when this started, maybe between 1,000 to 2,000 that could reach Israel, and I think that they've fired about 500. But most importantly, the IDF and the Israeli Air Force have been able to take out, as you mentioned, almost half of the missile launchers. So each night we've seen fewer and fewer ballistic missiles being fired at Israel. All of the drones that have been fired at Israel have been taken out. We understand that Israeli pilots, along with American fighter pilots, have been taking down those drones each night. So American pilots have been helping as well, as along with those U.S. Navy destroyers. There are 5 U.S. Navy destroyers in the Eastern Med off the coast of Israel who've been using their Aegis defense systems to shoot down ballistic missiles over Israel. So the U.S. has been very involved, along with U.S. soldiers who are on the ground. There are about 300 U.S. soldiers that are working at who are manning the THAAD and the Patriot PAC-3 missiles that are defending cities within Israel, and those are operated by U.S. soldiers, about 100 soldiers per THAAD missile.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here.
There you have it, you guys. So we are covering the update that the United States has struck Iran. I'm watching the live feeds right now, along with pulling up news reports for you. So let's go ahead and take a look at this so that way you can see it for yourself. Trump has announced that there are U.S. attacks on Iran that have just taken place, successful attacks. In addition to that, Donald Trump is going to be addressing the nation after the attacks on Iran here shortly. So let's cover this so you can know exactly when he's going to be addressing the nation. Let's see here. Oh, and if you haven't done so yet, please take a second and hit the like button. Helps the channel, and subscribe if this is your first time here and you want to stay up to date on breaking news. President Donald Trump said in a post on Truth Social that he will address the nation Saturday night tonight following the completion of attacks on Iranian nuclear sites. The attacks marked the first direct military involvement by the United States amid escalating conflict between Israel and Iran. I will be giving an address to the nation at 10 p.m. at the White House regarding our very successful military operation in Iran, Trump said in a post. This is an historic moment for the United States of America, Israel, and the world. The president explained, adding, Iran must now agree to end this war. Thank you. Earlier in the day, Trump posted and said U.S. forces had hit at least 3 targeted sites. We have completed our very successful attack on 3 nuclear sites in Iran, including Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan, Trump stated in the earlier post. All planes are now outside of Iran's airspace. A full payload of bombs was dropped on the primary site of Fordow, Trump said, adding, all planes are safely on their way home. Congratulations to our great American warriors. There is not another military in the world that would have done this. Now is the time for peace. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So we are about to hit 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So in about 1 hour from now, Trump is going to be addressing the nation. Let's take a look at this article giving us some more information as to what is coming out here. Trump announces U.S. attack on Iran. Trump said that it was a successful attack. The president said 3 nuclear sites were hit. It included Iran's deeply protected site in Fordow. And let me know in the comments, are you concerned about Iran retaliation against the United States? As I've been sharing with you yesterday and a couple days before that, we are now hearing massive warnings coming out of sleeper cell attacks on the U.S. and also U.S. military bases being hit. If you're concerned about that, put yes in the comments. If you are not, put no. Let me know your thoughts, as we're hearing that Iran may retaliate. They said that they would. We will see if they are actually going to do that. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Now, this article coming out just a little while ago says, President Trump announced on Truth Social on Saturday that the United States carried out a successful attack on 3 of Iran's nuclear sites. We have completed our very successful attack on the 3 nuclear sites in Iran, including Fordow, Natanz, on Esfahan, Trump said. All planes are now on the outside of Iran's airspace. These are the same quotes we just read. President Donald Trump will also be addressing to the nation at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time today what has unfolded. A source close to the White House told News Nation President Trump has said for over a decade that Iran cannot have a nuke. Tonight, he turned those words into a reality. Next up, dismantling Hezbollah cells in Latin America and Venezuela. So they want to get all the sleeper cells as well. Mike Nelson, retired Special Forces Lieutenant Colonel and member of the Atlantic Council's Counterterrorism Project, told News Nation, this means it's likely that this phase of the war is over. If we were effective, Israel can declare victory and stop the strikes. But I think that Iran will try to find a way to retaliate against us, but maybe not immediately. And again, let me know, are you afraid of that retaliation? Are you concerned about that retaliation? As we heard of sleeper cells in the U.S., if so, put yes. If no, put no. They may do some pro forma missile strike against Israel and against our forces in Iraq, much like Soleimani. But if they do a real retaliation, it will be something more targeted. We will need to wait and see if the strike was effective. The MOPs were not a guarantee, but hopefully they destroyed Fordow, he said. So that is coming out as well. So we're going to be seeing here what unfolds next. Now, I've also got the live feeds pulled up. I tried to get for you the latest video footage that was coming out. Let's see if there's any updates here on the live feeds for you and see what they're saying.
But also a lot of the stuff that was coming from the north out of southern Lebanon with Hezbollah, that was mostly the Iron Dome that is very famous, that was being used. But when you start to talk about some of the higher level threats, you're talking about David's Sling. You know, the U.S. has a THAAD missile battery, which is a theater high altitude air defense system that is actually in Israel to help them defend against those. Those are very capable systems, but they're not as prolific as the Iron Dome system. So it's so when there's a certain number of missiles that do come in, ballistic missiles, which those systems would intercept, at some point you just work on the math, which is you only have so many air defense missiles, and some of them get through. And many, with the system, it identifies where it is, it tries to figure out where it's going, and then they make a targeting decision, which is, do we launch a missile to intercept that incoming ballistic missile? And if it's going into some empty farm field and stuff, well, then there's probably not a lot of reason to waste an air defense missile doing it. But in some cases, these missiles have gotten through. We think, we don't know exactly how many missiles Iran can launch. I've heard variations. Maybe they have 1,000 or 1,200 missiles. And then I've also heard that over half of their launchers have been taken out. And it's not clear how many of those 1,000 or 1,200 would be associated with launchers that are no longer there. So you have to do a little bit of math.
We're coming on the air at this hour.
Well, okay, let's say it was all equally distributed across the board, then that means if they had 1,000 and they took out over half the launchers, that they could only launch, say, 500 missiles. That's still a lot of missiles.
We're coming on the air at this hour because we have breaking news. President Trump has just announced on social media that the U.S. has just completed 3 successful attacks on 3 nuclear sites in Iran. This is the post that he put out just a short time ago. We have completed our very successful attack on the 3 nuclear sites in Iran, including Fordow, Natanz, and Esfahan. All planes are now outside of Iran airspace. A full payload of bombs was dropped on the primary site, Fordow. all planes are safely on their way home. Congratulations to our great American warriors. There is not another military in the world that could have done this. Now is the time for peace. Thank you for your attention to this matter. That statement from President Trump right there, if you remember, he gave a 2-week deadline for him to consider whether or not he was going to use those bunker-busting bombs on that Iranian nuclear site. And now the president making that decision tonight and following through. Let's go ahead and bring in our Rachel Scott, our White House correspondent, who's been following all of this very closely. Rachel, we know that the president was meeting with his national security team tonight, and it seems like they had big plans and followed through.
This comes after a series of meetings that the president has had with his national security team in the Situation Room, in which the president was really mulling over this decision of whether the United States should get directly involved. I will tell you, the president really warming up to this idea, especially over the last several days. I spoke to him by phone just 1 week ago. At that point, he told me that it's possible that the United States could get it right now. Now the realm of possible is still looking for an addict approach. Time for Iran come to this to make a nearly remarkable turn. President heading to the summit.
Forgive me if we could, Rachel, forgive me if we could pause for a moment because we're having some trouble with your cell phone reception. We'll try to come back to you in just a minute there. I'm being told that we do have someone else on the phone with us. Molly, could you repeat that? General Abrams is joining us now on the phone. General, obviously this news is just coming in. We knew this is something that the president was considering. He was meeting with his top national security officials tonight, but he did give that 2-week time period that he was going to consider all of this. What do you think changed?
Well, Whit, I think, first off, I think the president preserved all options. And by putting a 2-week timeline on, he probably intentionally gave the Iranians sort of a feel that they had time to sort of gather themselves and gather their defense, which really provided an opportunity for our Air Force crews, our air crews, to have the element of surprise. And so they were able to get in and get out, as reported by the president, safely, which we're all very thankful for. And we're going to have to wait a couple of days to see how much success they had.
All right, General, thank you so much. We'll try to check back with you in just a moment, but I do want to get to our Ian panel, who's been following all of this very closely. Ian, I believe you are still there on the ground in Israel. What can you tell us about what you're learning?
Yeah, this is a major event. I mean, we have been speaking to Israeli officials over the last few days, and they were certainly making it clear to us that this 2-week window that had been set up by President Trump was unrealistic. One official said to me, without agreeing to be quoted, they felt that it was going to be much quicker than that. Remember, they have hit a number of facilities across Iran. It's now 10 days since the first bombs were dropped by Israel on Iran. But the difficulty was this one particular facility at Fordow. It's buried deep inside a mountain, and it was felt that Israel, in fact no other nation, would have the necessary ordnance nor the aircraft capable of carrying out a mission that would be capable of destroying that. Now, we have to wait and see a bomb damage assessment, see how successful it's been. Nevertheless, we were reporting and we're hearing that U.S. stealth bombers have been moved closer to the area, to Diego Garcia, which is it's owned by Mauritius. It's got a British base there, and that has been the base in the Indian Ocean that would allow American bombers to be within much closer striking distance to Iran. And as the president has said, it looks like the U.S. bombers have taken place. So as we were reporting again, it was the likely the B-2 stealth bombers, which is the only bomber in the world that's capable of carrying these MOPs, these massive ordnance projectiles, these very heavy bombs. But what makes them specific is they're able to dig into the ground. In other words, they don't explode the second they touch the ground. They physically dig down into the land and then detonate. And because the depth of Fordow was so deep, it was felt that this was needed. Now, Israeli officials have been making clear to me that if President Trump decided not to act or delayed his decision, that they would act anyway. And we have to wait and hear hear from Israeli officials what their role in this is. It is possible, of course, that this would be a one-off strike. I think that's less likely. It could be part of a complex of military action, not necessarily all strikes, perhaps something on the ground. They've been intelligence gathering about this facility. I mean, Israeli officials have been telling us that they're very upbeat, that they feel they've been enormously successful so far. They've already set back Iran's nuclear energy production. Of course, the Israelis in particular, and certainly President Trump, were concerned that their production of highly enriched uranium had got to this point, to 60% of production, that it could very easily then be transferred into weapons-grade uranium. And that was something that the International Atomic Energy Agency, an independent UN agency, had said was the situation, that Iran had basically doubled its production of this material, and Israel had seen that as an existential threat, that having dealt with the other so-called enemies in the neighborhood, dealt with Hamas, dealt with Hezbollah in Lebanon, in Syria, you've had a change of regime, that it was actually Iran was the one remaining piece of the puzzle. And in order to ensure the safety of the state of Israel, then they had to be sure that Iran was no longer capable of being within weeks of producing potentially weapons-grade uranium. Now, we know that the U.S. intelligence community, this has been a dispute between the president and his own director of national intelligence and the intelligence community, whether Iran had the intent to make a nuclear weapon. No one's seen any evidence to say that was the case. The issue is that they had the capability, and the judgment in an intelligence and political way was too much. So what we know from the president is that there has been this bombing run. The president described it as successful. It has hit a number of sites, including Fordo, this uranium facility, which was a hidden facility up until a few years ago. It was actually President Obama who announced to the world the existence of this. And there's always been concern that even though there were agreements with Iran in place for a while, they were torn up by President Trump, the JCPOA, this nuclear a treaty which basically meant that Iran was not supposed to enrich uranium up to a certain amount, and certainly wasn't supposed to use it for nefarious purposes, that actually the reality on the ground was that Iran was not abiding, at least by the spirit, if not by the letter, of this agreement, and that had continued to raise concerns. Israel, for years, has been flagging what the situation is, but I think two things had happened, and I've heard this from Israeli officials. The two strikes that took place by Iran on Israeli soil and by Israel on Iranian soil last year were indicators to Israel that they were seeing things that were of grave concern to them, and that they felt that the window of opportunity was open, and that if they didn't act preemptively, then they could get to the point where it would be too late for them to respond. That's certainly what Israeli military and political officials will tell you here. So that is the situation. It is an important development. We've already seen some reaction from certainly the Iranian media, adverse reaction to America's role. Ayatollah Khamenei, the supreme leader of Iran, had already threatened retaliation against America if this took place. There is a lot of nervousness in the region. Here in Israel, for example, the American military has been evacuating American diplomats and their families who wish to get out the area. Everyone has been put on high alert. There are a lot of American troops stationed throughout the region, not least in Iran, where there are a lot of pro-Iranian militias, and also inside Syria. Syria obviously is more benign territory, but it doesn't mean that there aren't bad actors there, and that will be of concern as well. Diplomatic, military and civilian ties. And of course, the State Department have been advising any American citizen to get out of Iran. That will also prove extremely difficult at the moment. But certainly, I would say in terms of foreign policy, this is the most important, most significant moment of President Trump's second term.
We are getting some information here in that Israel was notified in advance of this attack, these three different attacks on nuclear sites there. And Ian, no doubt this is what Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu wanted.
Oh, undoubtedly, it's not just what Prime Minister Netanyahu, the Israeli cabinet, and honestly, a large number of the Israeli population wanted, but it's also what Netanyahu and others have been lobbying for some time, trying to make the case to the president. And I spoke to the Israeli president just a couple of days ago, and he was making this point, trying to make other leaders understand that this wasn't just about a threat to Israel. This was about a threat to the wider region, a threat to Europe and a threat to the United States, a nuclear-armed Iran, a country that pretty much since the Iranian Revolution in 1979, has sworn to eradicate the state of Israel, has used blood-curdling language to that effect. A country that has actively supported so-called proxy groups, in other words, bankrolling, arming military groups throughout the region to agitate against the United States and also Israel. Hezbollah, for example, in Lebanon, was accused of being one of the primary instigators in the Marines barracks bombing in Beirut back in the 1980s. There have been a number of instances where Iran has been seen as a malign actor against Israel and its Western allies. Part of what we've been witnessing since October 7, 2023 has been an attempt to try and degrade Iran and its sphere of influence. Iran had successfully established, we talk about it as a Shia crescent. Iranians are primarily part of the Shia branch of Islam rather than Sunni branch of Islam, which is dominant, of course, in the Gulf. And they had extended, certainly after the overthrow of Saddam Hussein, influence throughout Iran and then into Syria under President Bashar al-Assad. They were very active in the civil war there against the rebels, who obviously recently triumphed, and then into Lebanon itself with Hezbollah operating there. They were able to transfer weapons, transfer knowledge, and this was certainly regarded as a threat for Israel, which is part of the reason why it bombed Lebanon in the first place. And we've seen this gradual dismantling of the so-called Shia crescent. It's been an historic time in the Middle East. Whatever one side anybody may sit upon, you can't deny that the face of the Middle East has been radically changed under the Netanyahu government and with the backing of President Biden and now President Trump. So no surprise, I think, that the Israelis were notified. The Israelis would have to work in concert with the US. It remains to be seen whether any Israeli aircraft or resources were used. We know that Israel had said just a couple of days ago that they controlled the skies over Iran. That would have been very important for the Americans and any operation. In President Trump's message on Truth Social, he says that they hit 3 sites, not just Fordo. And that would potentially imply that, obviously, that multiple aircraft were involved. And we have to wait and see if Israeli aircraft were also involved. If not, certainly Israel appears to have eyes on the ground, has a number of intelligence gathering sources. It's been going after people on the ground, individuals, nuclear scientists, key military commanders, and it has, like it did in Lebanon against Hezbollah, dismantled a lot of the leadership. But there are huge questions about what the reaction is and what happens next. Now, President Trump again says on Truth Social, he refers to let's make peace. Well, is Iran going to be ready to make peace? Now America has taken part in this bombing. What will the reaction be in the wider region, where we saw on Friday, after midday prayers, significant protests, tens, hundreds of thousands of people out on the streets in many countries throughout the region, angry at Israel's bombing, and a lot of that anger will now turn to the United States. As we've said, there will be huge concerns for the safety of U.S. civilians, U.S. military, U.S. interests throughout this region, which are multifarious, in not just troops on the ground. You have the U.S. Fifth fleet docked in the region, in the Gulf. You have military camps spread throughout the region, but of course you have multiple businesses, embassies, consulates. So there are huge numbers of things to be of concern about. There have been certainly worries about the U.S. consulate here in Tel Aviv and whether or not that would potentially be a site for retaliation. It's been very quiet, relatively here, in terms of Iranian attacks. And everyone had expected that to change, as it has most nights, pretty much around this time. We have to see what the impact on Iran is. I think those people who feel that Iran could be easily bombed into submission do not necessarily understand the country. As we saw in Iraq, even as we saw in Afghanistan, it is countries and the regimes that govern them are not naturally given to immediately acquiescing to foreign intervention, to foreign bombing. In many senses, it can act as a rallying call for the nation to get behind the leader, in this case, this theocracy that has run Iran since the 1980s. And so we have to wait and see what the reaction is. They had threatened in blood-curdling language, the Ayatollah and others, that there would be direct retaliation against American interests in the region. And we have to wait and see whether that was just rhetoric or whether that was a genuine threat that will be followed through on. We have to wait and see what the bomb damage assessment is. Is Israel going to be content to say, we've looked at the damage and we've degraded Iran's nuclear capability enough to be acceptable? And again, speaking to a senior military official just 2 days ago, he made it clear we never said we'd get rid of all of Iran's nuclear capability. We just said that we would degrade it so it was not an imminent threat.
There you have it, you guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you think that Iran is going to retaliate against the United States? If you think so, put yes. If you think no, put no. Let me know your thoughts. But we've been hearing the warnings of potential sleeper cell attacks against the United States. I've been keeping you up to speed on this so that way you are aware of everything that's going on here. As let's go ahead and take a look at this article that has actually just come out today with a reminder of these warnings. You can see here, Iran-Israel war news. Alarming reports claim that sleeper cells may have deployed across Western nations by Tehran. And I shared with you, we got warnings from the FBI. We got warnings from the White House yesterday. And we are hearing other people coming out and saying that there are sleeper cells in various cities around the nation. I went through the entire list with you. Here's a synopsis of this coming out today, June 20th, 2025. Or excuse me, yesterday was June 20th. It says Iran's sleeper cell threat is now a growing concern for Western nations as Tehran faces heavy Israeli airstrikes on its military and nuclear sites. With its leadership shaken and military command weakened, Iran may turn to global sleeper cells to strike back. Security experts warn that these hidden agents could launch attacks on civilian infrastructure or even high-profile figures like U.S. President Donald Trump. UK intelligence has already uncovered at least 15 plots linked to Iran, and threats continue to rise as Tehran grows more desperate. The danger of hidden terror networks becoming active is greater than ever before. Iran's sleeper cell terror threat is the West prepared for Tehran's desperate response to Israeli strikes. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Again, do you think that this is going to happen? If you think so, put yes. If you think no, put no. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you appreciate the updates and you haven't done so yet, take a second, hit that like button for me. Subscribe to stay up to date. I'll keep you up to speed on whatever unfolds. More video footage coming out here with the breaking news that the United States has now struck Iran. Let's go ahead and take a look at this video footage.
All right, we want to head to Israel on the ground. I just want to reiterate, this is a huge moment in that President Donald Trump has authorized and the U.S. military has just pulled off strikes inside Iran at 3 different nuclear sites, Fordo, Natanz, and Esfahan. The word coming from President Trump's Truth Social that the bombers were outside of Iranian airspace, that the payload of bombs was dropped on the primary site, Fordo. As you look at the map there, I want to go live on the ground to Trey Yingst, Chief Foreign Correspondent, about reaction there on the ground, what the Israelis are saying, plus what you think this fallout may be.
Yeah, Brett, good evening. This has been the talk of Israel for the past several days as the country waited to see if the Americans would get directly involved in the conflict. And even up in the last few hours, I was talking with current and former sources, trying to get an understanding of when this might happen. And at 1:55 local time, one source said rumors, Trump gave the word, supposed to be happening now. We were working on tracking it down, and the president taking to Truth Social to say the Americans did indeed strike 3 separate Iranian nuclear facilities, including the Fordow nuclear facility deep underground outside of the Iranian capital of Tehran. The bottom line here is that people are talking about enrichment. They understand that this decision was made because the Iranians were increasing their uranium enrichment capabilities and increasing the purity closer and closer to weapons-grade material. And the concern was that the Iranian regime was just weeks away from being able to build a nuclear bomb. We've seen over the past 9 days, the country has the ability to strike major population centers here in Israel with ballistic missiles. So you can imagine that having a nuclear warhead that could ultimately be attached to a ballistic missile would clearly be a direct threat to the Jewish state. And that was why the Israelis said that they made the decision to start these strikes against Iranian nuclear facilities and against top IRGC officials. And clearly tonight, President Trump ordering these strikes against the Iranian regime's nuclear program because there was no off-ramp for diplomacy at this point. There was that 60-day window that President Trump gave the Iranians to come to the table. 5 rounds of conversations, most of them taking place in Oman, with Steve Witkoff, President Trump's Middle East envoy, other top American officials meeting directly and indirectly with their Iranian counterparts, but the Iranians did not want to finish a deal. And ultimately, the decision was made by Israel to launch this operation that has led to a war developing between the two countries. And then again, tonight, the Americans getting directly involved, launching these strikes with those bombers over Iranian territory. We will certainly learn more information as daylight comes tomorrow in the region. But the bottom line here is that a decision was made that will change the reality of the current war between Israel and Iran and possibly create a scenario where the Iranians really have no other option than to give in, because the president has hit them so hard with these strikes, and the Israelis are continuing to take out their top military leadership, that the country is in a state of disarray. And so the bottom line here is that these strikes tonight show not only solidarity with the American ally in the Middle East, Israel, but also they show that the region is at a crossroads here. There are clear decisions that will have to be made by the regime officials that are still alive and by the country's supreme leader and the country's president, Masoud Pezeshkian. And so certainly more hours ahead, we'll learn that information. But again, the bottom line tonight is that the decision was made by President Trump to take out, in effect, these nuclear facilities that the Iranians were using to enrich uranium closer and closer to weapons-grade material. You might remember back during the nuclear deal that President Trump pulled out of in 2018, the Iranians were enriching uranium at 3.67%. According to the International Atomic Energy Agency, they were enriching uranium close to 60% purity, getting very, very close to a weapons-grade purity, which would give them the component that they would need to create a nuclear weapon. And so this is a historic moment in the Middle East tonight, and again, an opportunity for the region, as the president laid out in his statement, for peace in the future, because this is a region that understands peace through strength. Brett?
Yes, that's definitely true. Trey, stand by.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to...
There you have it, you guys. Man, let me know your thoughts in the comments. And take a look at this. Breaking news, 6 U.S. B-2 stealth bombers appear to be heading towards Guam. This is reporting updates after the Israeli-Iran conflict. Let's take a look at this just coming out as well.
Now, we are also following some breaking news coming in from Fox News here just moments ago, as they do say that 6 U.S. B...
Oh, no, I apologize. No, this is not breaking news. Ignore that. I thought it said 12 minutes ago. It said 12 hours ago. But you guys, we are getting the updates that Donald Trump is going to be speaking here in, it looks like 30 minutes to the nation, addressing what has unfolded. So we will see what he has to say and where we go from here. Donald Trump to address the nation after attacking Iran nuclear sites. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Are you concerned about Iran retaliating against the United States? We've heard the warnings of sleeper cells, of U.S. military bases in the Middle East being hit. Are you concerned about that? If you think so, put yes. If you think no, put no. Also, don't forget, take a second, hit that like button for me. Subscribe to stay up to date. In the breaking news, the United States has now entered the war, hitting Iran nuclear sites, and we're going to see what happens going forward. Are we seeing the unfolding of World War III? If you think so, put yes. If you think no, put no. But regardless of what unfolds, I'll be sure to share it here on the channel so that way you know exactly what is going on. And as always, I'm going to cite the sources, put it on the screen, read right from it, play the video footage, so that way you can see the dates, the sources, you can know exactly what's going on, get the latest updated information. But regardless of what unfolds, I'll be sure to share here on the channel. So like I said, if this is your first time here, subscribe to stay up to date. It's totally free. Hit that like button. And that is the latest, you guys. We'll see where we go next, and I will let you know here on the channel. Thank you so much for joining me. Take care. God bless. This is Steve.